Welcome to Behind the Smiles podcast, where we go beyond the surface while talking to labs and DSOs about everything your highlight reel doesn't show. If you're into stories, strategy, and a little bit of startup chaos, this one is for you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me here for Behind the Smiles podcast. I'm Vikas. I'm the host at Smile Genius Dental. And with me here today are Matt Everatt and Nigel Stafford. So Nigel's from Arrow Orthodontics, and Matt is the advisor of Smile Genius and one of the former founders of the S4S Labs UK. Gentlemen, very nice to have you both here on the show. We'd love to get into some of the details of how the lab world has grown, and what's what are the pressures that the labs face today, and get into those things a little bit more. But Nigel, it will be great if you can actually introduce yourself a little bit so that everybody can know who you are.
Okay, yeah, my name's Nigel. I'm one of the partners at Arrow Orthodontics. I've been in orthodontics since 1989. We've had our own me and my business partner Michael, we've had our own orthodontic lab since 2003. But we've both been in orthodontics. Well, myself 89, Michael since 1975. So we've got a fair few years of experience. But that's all we do at Arrow. We just do orthodontics.
Hey Nigel, it's not just doing orthodontics. Orthodontics is that's my background as well.
It's a niche. It's that sort of little sort of offshoot, isn't it? From Crown and Bridge, dentistry. Oh no, we do ortho, and it's okay. That's how it seems like. Anyway, it's
Absolutely,
always,
yeah.
Is it seen as the more polished version of dentistry, or is it seen more as the aesthetic? Fashionable
it's a funny one. It's a funny one because, it's bending bits of wire, and you're doing a bit of all sorts. You might put some teeth in there, you put some springs in there, you design. You're dealing with biology a lot more in terms of how teeth move and develop and so on. So it's a different one. And having worked in a teaching hospital for a while, I worked the ortho lab. We were the guys that the prosthetics guys would come and see us and go, "Can you just quickly bend us this bit of wire?" Because it take them days to do it. So
the odd clasp or something.
Yeah.
And Matt, I think it's a nice segue into how have things evolved? Just to set some context, right? From a practice mindset, right? So there's obviously been so much that's happened from an innovation standpoint. There's a lot of R&D money that gets pumped into improving how a practice works. How has that affected how the lab operates? Has that sort of dictated or has shaped you guys into how you operate in the last 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, I don't know if you want to go first, Nigel, or you.
Yeah, I would say it was especially with the 3D printing. We got our sort of first 3D printer. It must have been about 2017 or 18. We got our scanner a few years before that. I reckon we must have got our first scanner about 2012, 2013. It was basically, we got it because a big sort of surgeon of ours, he wanted all of his records archiving, and he was looking into, instead of having all that space used up for record keeping, because there must be thousands and thousands of models. If you see about, I think we worked out, if you see about 5 new patients a day, you'll end up with about 20. You've got to keep them for 10 years, so you'll end up with about 20,000 models just stored away. So he wanted to digitize his sort of archive. So we brought our first scanner, and it cost us about £20,000, something like that. And then within sort of 3 or 4 months of getting it, he changed his mind because the costings were too much for even at a discount. Oh, well, we'll do them at a discount, but it's going to take time, but we'll do them at a discount. And then he changed his mind. But by that time, we were sort of on our way, sort of early entry digital. And then I think we brought our first 3D printer about 2017-18, and again that was about 25 grand. And it was being used about once every 6 months. It was only sort of since lockdown, I think since sort of COVID and lockdown, those first few months after, I think that's when it sort of rocketed. You know, spending 25 grand on a 3D printer, now you can get one to do the same job for sort of hundreds.
Yeah.
It's this old one. It weighed a ton. It took up loads. It took up about the same amount of space as 3D printers we're using now at the moment. I'd say it's all really sort of really took off since sort of COVID and lockdown.
Yeah, it's rapidly changed, hasn't it? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a similar experience with a massive practice down in Surrey wanted to digitise all their. They had 2 massive surgery rooms full of models, which we freed up. They created 2 more surgeries, and the orthodontist had a double garage full of models. So he got his double garage back. Rapidly moving on from that, 3D printers now, we've got, banks of them, as you say, they're much smaller, much more efficient.
Yeah.
3D planning. I don't know if you do any 3D aligners, Nigel, but like the 3D software now is so much quicker and slicker than it ever has been. And we use Smart Genius as a portal to link between lab and surgery for 3D, certainly for the 3D aligners side of business. So it's massively evolved, Vikas. It really has. And these last 12 months, I think, have just gone off
Really?
the scale. Yeah, off the scale.
What was the particular observation just for the last 12 months, Matt?
I think there's so much more technology out there, so the prices have come down, the speeds have gone up. We're talking now about automation as well, so labs are starting to think more about efficiencies. Using 3D technology now to be more efficient. And of course, what we find is, and you'll have heard me say this probably quite a few times, Vikas. I don't. You might not have, Nigel, but we're getting all these things that make us more efficient and more effective and more accurate, which they are. There's no doubt in. 3D scans, intraoral scans are really fantastic. But we're bolting all these little things together, which make us really inefficient at one end as well. So admin-wise, I think we're more admin heavy now than we ever have been because of all these different things we've got.
Yeah. No, I think that's absolutely true. And Nigel, I think that's a great point that Matt had. So, where does your team spend most of their time today? Is it mostly manufacturing, or do you have equal parts in terms of human attention and human time going into checking for prescriptions, following up with doctors, ensuring that communications are, clear with them, and making sure that invoices are being sent out on time and stuff like that? Like between admin and manufacturing, where do you kind of see that sit between time and effort?
I'd say the majority of my staff spend their time on the sort of manufacture, making the appliances, making the models, digitizing, downloading the scans, and prepping them ready for the printing. Then cleaning up the following day's models, getting them ready for retainers and things like that. But I find my time that it's my time that seems to sort of just disappear. Whereas I'm then sort of dealing with surgeons and sort of chasing up payments and answering emails. Although, we've got someone to do the invoicing and chasing up payments. It's chasing up and sorting out little problems. That's where I find my time disappears. We've got those surgeons who they've not fully committed to the intraoral scanning and the sort of going digital that way, but they're still taking impressions, which is fine, but it's then sending them to us and then we're digitizing them. And that's where, you could say that's where it's not as efficient, because you're still doing that sort of the old school with the plaster and the models, and you're sort of, like you're saying, Matt, you're sort of crowbarring it into the sort of, right, well, you want those plaster models digitized, that's fine. Those impressions aren't the best, we'll do our best with them. And it's so, and then, but you still want your retainers going back on plaster so we're still sort of manufacturing for certain surgeons on plaster models, but then they want their sort of models digitizing. So it's things like that, and trying to sort that out, sort of the overlap of that sort of old and new. And I think that's where a lot of, in a way, it seems a lot of my time is wasted doing things like that, rather than sort of sitting at the bench and sort of manufacturing, really. It's almost, I'm trying to squeeze, the bit I'm good at is the bit I'm sort of trying to squeeze in at the end of the day. That my time seems to get, I just get pulled in all those places, rather than the actual, right, let's make this appliance and stuff. That's how I find my time anyway going.
That's such a common thread now. You know, Vikas, if we think about that husband and wife couple that we spoke to in Birmingham, such a common thing. You know, it's almost like she said she's going to have to go back and do 2 all weekend just doing some admin work to catch up, to start fresh on Monday. It was just like, well, it's a real cost. And it is often, it's the trying to mesh together all these different things to streamline. You know, we've got some amazing technology now, and the stuff we're doing, you know, and automation is going to be the next step. You know, I've seen some amazing, particularly for retainers, some amazing machines that, you know, you can churn through vacuum forming processes, but we're still going to be limited by the Dr. Smith down the road wants to send some impressions, and he wants to send you a picture via WhatsApp. And then the other doctor in the same surgery wants invoicing separately because he pays his bills on a different thing. And it's all that mess, and it's just...
Yeah, we find that as well. We have some surgeons who will pay... we don't get checks anymore, but then again, I still write the odd check every now and again. So I'm not, I'm not totally, I do all online banking. I do send the odd check every now and again, but we don't really receive payments by check anymore. But what we do find is, you'll find certain practices will pay. They'll send the bank transfer over, and it'll be all separate and be all broken down for each account in that practice, which makes it great for us. But then other practices will send a payment through, and it might be for 2 or 3 surgeons in that practice. And then you've got to work out how that is proportioned and whose account that is for and how much. And then there might be some historical old payments in there. And there's sort of no explanation of this payment is for them and him and that, and this was from 2 months ago. You'll just get one payment coming in, and then you've got to try and pick the bones out of it and try and work out whose account is that? Who does that need to be assigned to? What does that pay? Oh, that pays that invoice. And
Nigel,
some are sort of good when... In a way, I'd rather have them separate payments, and then I can say that's for that surgeon for that month, and that's for that surgeon at that month, rather than a great big payment.
Nigel, did you ever get a client where they say, "Well, would you just send a random payment of 2,000, and they do that kind of every month?" Like, but your bill's 3. Oh, well, we're paying 2,000 now, and then we'll pay 2,000 next month. Like, but it doesn't. Well, what do you want us to assign that to?
Yeah, we haven't had that one. We'll have the ones where there's a slight sort of typo, and okay, yeah, I can see what you've done there. We'll write that off because it's like pennies. But what we find is they'll pay for a month, 2 months, and then it's all going fine. And then all of a sudden they won't pay for sort of 1 month or 2 months. And then you'll pick up again, say last month, and you'll get a payment for June. So you've paid for February and March, you've randomly left out April and May, and then you've paid June, and it's like, well, why have you... and they'll be like, oh, I forgot, or I didn't get the invoice or something like that. But then you're sort of trying to chase up historical payments, and then be, oh, I've paid. Well, yeah, you have paid, but you didn't pay those from 2 months ago, and that's another sort of gripe as well. And it's things like that, and that's what sort of sucks your time rather than.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I mean, just to kind of add on top of what you're saying, Nigel, the perspective that we have heard from clinics is the fact that when we place lab orders, so they're using a PMS system, that is, their patient-facing system, and then they're obviously seeing patients coming in through the door. And then when they're placing these lab orders, one of the things that happens on the PMS system is that it just goes up there as a record to say lab work expected by X date, and that's about it. So that system actually never communicates with your lab management system or any other systems that you're using for invoicing. And essentially, that's where, the whole process gets broken. And so the consistent thing that we hear from clinics is, I know that I've placed a lab order. I'm expecting an invoice at the end of the month. I have to get my doctor, who is again parking their time from seeing patients, to check those invoices and make sure that, yep, these are the different lab orders that I did for this month. And then they send it on to the practice manager. The practice manager then looks at the system, and then they'll be like, yep, this looks all right. And then they send it to the finance manager. And the finance manager has no clue about, what whatsoever has happened within the practice, right? So they say, okay, it's coming from the practice manager. This is the sum. This is who it needs to go to. And that's it. They just punch that number in and they make that payment happen.
Yeah.
And so the reconciliation bit is absolutely broken within this space, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the reason why some people never pay on time. People, underpay. And some of the things that I've heard from a couple of different labs, at least, is that they have been overpaid as well. And is that a situation that you've seen common as well, where you've been overpaid in a few instances?
Yeah, we'll keep quiet about the overpayments.
Usually we find when we get some sort of mistake and we get a massive sort of overpayment or for something, like, oh, we've sent that to you by error, it needs to come back. They're usually on the phone pretty quick, and it usually gets sorted out pretty quick. Whereas when it's, you owe us this couple of hundred for this a few months ago, just send us the invoice, I'll put it on his desk, and he'll take a look at it. And that's it's usually a speedier getting, can we have that back, because and obviously it's your money, that's fine, we're not going to hide it from you, but you've paid us by error. And then usually you get a lot quicker response to, we've mispaid you, can you send it back, give us a refund, than it is when you're sort of chasing up a couple of £100 for months on end.
Yeah.
But then again, those couple of £100, they mount up.
They do.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Do you know, Vic asked you, and Nigel will know this because it's a typical thing with orthodontic labs. Because we make a lot of retainers, what sometimes happens is, and some of the orthodontists, they might work at different practices. They'll often have patient. They say, "Oh, can you send a retainer direct to patient, or can you send it to a different practice because I'm going to fit it there?" And there's no trail of that whatsoever. So what you then get is you get a phone call from a practice going, "Where's these retainers? The patient's coming in today." Well, actually, we sent them 2 weeks ago. Patients probably were wearing them, or the orthodontist fitted them in another practice, or you don't get paid for them, and it's because the practice manager's gone, "Well, we've never received that lab work." Well, you have, we sent it so and so, and when the patient comes back in, sure enough, they've got the retainers fitted. That happens a lot.
Yeah, I agree. We do get that as well. We have a dentist saying, the patient has come in here, we took the scans, can you send them there? But we're going to pay, or we've took the impressions, can you send them there? They're going to fit them there, but they're going to pay. And we do get that, and it does get, and then we do get, why have you sent us these retainers? They shouldn't be for us, they should be for, well, it says on it, and we've been told by the surgeon, can you send them there? And sometimes they're just, even the reception and practice management, they're out the loop because they've not been informed by the dentist that this is what I'm going to do with that patient. I think again, it's that sort of mix of sort of old and new with the you still get, well, I still find we still get a lot of pen and ink and paper and lab tickets and stuff, especially with Damas. On a different subject, we had a Damas sort of audit about 2 or 3 months ago. Yeah, Damas is still very much pen and paper. There's lots of handwritten, you've got assigned lab chits and things like that. But then you've got, all the technology coming in. And it's like, well, we've got all these lab tickets. What are we going to do with them? And it's like, well, you've got to keep those now 10 years. And the solution to that is, well, what do we do with them? And it's like, well, you could sort of scan them in, but which is fine. But it takes time just to. So we have big sort of storage boxes full of sort of lab tickets, 10 years worth of lab tickets, which it's that old and new. And I still think I think with dentistry, you've still got a lot of pen and paper, especially with Damas, and it conflicts sometimes with the sort of the technology and the 3D printing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Adds inefficiencies, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. You can be chasing a lot of paper up and finding an old lab ticket because you need to check something, or the surgeon wants to check what was written on it, or we've ordered retainers, we haven't got study models, and we have a look, well, you didn't ask for study models, that's why you've not got them. And it's like, all right, well, in future, can we have models with all our retainers? And then you do that, and then it's like, we didn't want these digital models for that patient. They were replacement retainers, and it's like, sometimes you can't win.
That's it.
You have to pick your battles. That's what I've heard.
Yeah,
you do.
And Nigel, it was very interesting to kind of see the conflict between, being some processes being manual just because of how they are versus some things being pushed through digital, right? And with that in mind, how has the relationship, between the lab as well as the clinic sort of changed over time in terms of say, for example, when clinics are sending you impressions, they're probably writing it on a piece of paper very naturally, right? And then one of the consistent things that we see, which is slightly more so in terms of general dentistry rather than ortho, is the fact that details are always missing. Like in terms of, the most basic stuff are not being mentioned, and you're probably having to chase them. Again, might not be a case for retainers and mouth guards. That might be pretty much more straightforward. But if you even look at aligners, I think Matt would know about aligners because he does a lot of them in his lab. We consistently see that as a pattern. So how much time do you actually spend on, say, non-retainer, non-mouth guards, especially on this side of things?
Regarding the I find you are sort of chasing up for sort of dates and things like that, and missing things. It can be difficult. Usually retainers, if they've not got a date on, we know that they're wanted back pretty quickly. So we usually get those done and sent back. It's things like designs and just double checking date requirements and things like that. Again, we've got a practice who send all their appliances. They send STL files rather than using the portal. To be honest, you could ask me at this appliance what scanner I won't be able to tell you what actual intraoral scanner they've got. But they're not using any portal, and they're being sent to us by email. And you've got the practice name, who it's for, and which surgeon it's for. That's great, but you don't have the date required. So then, when you get in touch with this certain practice, there's like an AI receptionist, and you can't get, but all you want to do is speak to someone and say, yeah, patient X, when's the appointment so I can get the appliance back to you? And then you're trying to get blood out of a stone sometimes with this AI receptionist, and in the end you leave a voicemail and then it never gets picked up. You do waste a lot of time trying to chase up sort of date required and things like that. Appliances, definitely. Retainers, in a way, it doesn't matter because, well, we know you need those back quickly anyway, and we'll get those done and we'll turn them around usually sort of within a day, 2 days, they'll be back in the post. But it's sort of missing dates are, a problem sometimes. And sort of, yeah.
I think if you do any aligners at all, Nigel, but typical one for us was just put something like Hollywood smile, please, and it's like, what does that even mean? What does a Hollywood smile mean? And so you need to speak to the dentist. And typically, you've hit the nail on the head there. The practice phone systems are geared up for patients, not for labs to call. And you'd be like, press 1 if you've got an emergency. Press 2 if you want. Da-da-da.
Yeah.
And you
press 2 if you're an existing customer and stuff like that. Yeah.
So it's not geared up for labs to speak to them. So typically, then we revert to things like, can you put a mobile number on on our account system so that we can contact someone? So you phone this mobile number, you get a dentist who's gone, stop ringing me, I'm in surgery, get really irate, or you then start sending WhatsApp messages, which is really efficient. Don't get me wrong, that's really good. We can send big file sizes as well, we can send videos, we can send pictures. It's great. But again, you've got to remember then, if I've dealt with that and then someone else is picking the case up somewhere else, there's got to be a link somewhere. There's got to be that. It's got to tie in together. Otherwise, it's just it's gone.
Yeah. And like the point, as we know, the point of Smile Genius as well is just having all those sort of 3D scanner portals in one place. We've got about 10 portals on the go, and having them all in one place is beneficial. But then you still get things sent over by email as an attachment, through OneDrive, through WeTransfer. It's just getting that information is all in one place. It can be hard work.
I think it's kind of allude back to where we are in terms of digital and things now. It feels to me a bit like we're at that stage and you'll remember this, Nigel, like the Betamax VHS, DVD. We're kind of on that journey, aren't we? Where we need to choose a system for everyone, for the whole dental practice, live, everything. Where we go, this is how we're going to do it because this is the most efficient way of doing it. Whereas at the minute we've got all these different mediums going on, and we're just trying to stitch it all together. And do I've
mentioned to Vikas before, just with all the 3D portals, just a standardised layout of a lab ticket would be beneficial, because all the different portals have got all the different sort of layouts of the tickets and what's needed and what's not. And again, they're all trying to cater for everybody. They're trying to cater for denture work, crown and bridge. Ortho is usually forgotten about until last moment. Then, well, where's the date on? Some will print out on a nice sheet of A4, because you've got to print it out. So because you still need the patient statement on, so you still need to sort of have that to comply with DAMAS. So, but then every portal's layouts are different. One will print out on a nice sheet of A4, that's great. Others will print out on 2 or 3 sheets of A4, and 2 of those sheets are a waste of time. So where's the date on this sheet? Where's the date required? Patient's name up here on one's there. One will say the practice and won't say the surgeon. Again, that don't comply with DAMAS. And like I said, we find DAMAS is very pen and paper and lots of you've got to keep records. Whereas, how are you meant to have a proper trail when? Well, we've sent this case over. It's an attachment on an email. I've given you the patient's name and what I want, but I haven't put a date required, and I haven't put for what surgeon it's actually wanted for, which again is a DAMAS flag. You've got no surgeon's name there.
Yeah. And I think one of the other problems that you might have seen, even with scanner cases being submitted, Nigel, is that the scanner account is set up in the principal's name, but it's the associate who's sending you those scans. And
Yeah,
so that's
and
confusing
some
as well.
will say then, Vikas, they'll say in the comments box, oh, this is for doctor or this is for this clinician, which is great. That's fine. You then can assign it to that dentist, so that's good for DAMAS, that's good for invoicing. But then other times you will get who's it for? You know, you don't know what practice. So, and sort of in cases like that, I know it's sort of going to be for that surgeon, or you'll say, well, I've just got to assign it to the principal of the practice because I don't know who it's for.
Yeah.
And then you can't sort of wait and, well, I can't do that one till I get a surgeon's name. That's, that's sort of not going to rub. So again, you're ringing up saying, who's this for? Is it for this? Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of chasing up. Yeah.
Particularly again for orthodontic labs, more so than crown and bridge and denture labs, particularly retainers. It's that they want it within a few days.
Quick, yeah.
So
they
do.
Want it, which is understandable, isn't it, Matt? You want it quick so you don't get a relapse. But yeah, it's when you've not got all the information. Yeah, it's you can make it and send it back, and that's fine. And again, it's awkward. GDPR that was brought in a good few years ago, and then it's like, well, who's this for? And then you'll have a patient number instead of a name, which is fine. But then, have you got this appliance for John Smith? Well, I don't know, because you send us all your information with patient numbers. There's no consistency there, and it's like you said earlier. There's all these things bolted on. And it's all those. It's trying to get the modern and the old sort of linking in,
working together.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. There's a lot of sort of chasing around, and I think that's where the time disappears to.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're aiming to do, Nigel, is obviously from a lab perspective, we're helping you connect up those 3D scanners. And eventually we want to connect up your emails and WhatsApp and your other sources where you're getting these cases from. And so you have the case context of what's really going on. So that's kind of the plan for the lab side, right? And where we want to dive into a little further, which is, our other side of the business, is also by working with dental groups. Because dental groups is a starting place for us where, their finance is a mess. Because what happens within dental groups, side of things as they grow is that they continue to buy up practices, which means there is additional headcount in terms of nurses, dentists, and the practice managers who come with it. But then the finance person is always that one person, and there's probably one bookkeeper with them who never gets to expand their team. So one of the biggest issues that we've seen with, say, a dental group of 50 clinics or 30 clinics even, is that they have one finance person. And very naturally, speaking about how dentistry in the UK works, because dentists get to choose which labs they want to work with, and they have a very personal relationship with all of these labs. Mm-hmm. They don't tend to change much of that, right? And so dental groups do understand this. And so the difficulty is when this finance manager has to make sure that payments are going into about 100 or 150 labs and making sure all that data is accurate, right? And so that's where the bottleneck is, and that's where all the delay of payments and not knowing who to pay, how much to pay. And that's why you often get those complaints where they say, we still owe you money. Okay, let me actually put that into my finance manager's desk, so because he's kind of responsible for that. And so that's the whole reason why those transactions get delayed from their side. And it's not to justify that what's being done is right. It's I'm not trying to say that, but what I'm trying to say is that systematically, obviously, there's no linkages, which means people are kind of a bit lost. And so that's, I think, one of the things that we're trying to stitch together for both you guys as well as them. Because on your side, we're able to say that, hey, here are all the orders that are coming in for you. And at some point, what we want to kind of show to the dental groups is, for all the orders that you're sending them over this side, here are all the invoices that they're sending you by email or whatever, which you have received. But then when you upload the invoice onto the SmileGenius system, you're able to understand what lab orders it was for. So it's very easy for them to know, okay, this is what's paid for, this is what's not paid for. So very transparent in terms of their, understanding, what needs to be paid for and what not. And so that is the first efficiency that we're trying to bring to the table. And the second thing that we're trying to bring to the table is the second point that you mentioned about, chasing people for dates and, people ringing you back asking that, it was supposed to be sent to this surgery. Why have you sent it to this surgery? But I never expected it, right? So what happens is that there is a clinical layer to it, which is, obviously when they're submitting the lab work to you, there is no consistency. So if you think of, all the great scanner portals, right? Like Arrow, 3Shape, they're all brilliant at like very different things. But one thing that they struggle to keep things consistent is the DAMA's regulation side. So for you, DAMA's regulation is super important, like in two factors. One is the DAMA side, and the other is obviously to know what you need to give them back as work, right? So with these two elements in mind, when the dentists are filling out prescriptions on these scanner portals or they're filling it out on a piece of paper, they don't have that standardization model at all. So when that data gets submitted to you, one of the things that we're actually, as we speak, building right now is something called case scoring within Smile Genius, where as soon as a dental scan is actually submitted and you receive that on the Smile Genius portal, we kind of show what data is actually missing for you to start servicing. And that's something that's immediately flagged even without your admin having to go through the order form, so that you're kind of aware of it, even, somebody checks it. And the other part that we're building is on the scan side, because what we do understand is scanner companies, say for example, when dental practices and groups, buy a new scanner for their entire group or for their practice, the scanner company comes and trains them. And then what happens is when the staff are like moving in and out, the training is passed on from one clinician to another clinician, or to an associate, or to a nurse, right? So it's all sort of learned knowledge, which is sometimes not 100%. And then that knowledge is then passed on to somebody else, where again, they're not at 100%.
Yeah, it's like a photocopy of a photocopy of a photo.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, where it starts to get more blurry. So what we're trying to bring in is also a scan health check, which we can surface up to you and then also surface up to them. Because one of the consistent issues that we've heard is, yes, dentists sometimes know that they've sent you a bad scan, but then they still want you to send the work back because they're obviously expecting the patient to come back and do the fitting, right? And so one of the issues that we've seen, and more so for general dentistry rather than for ortho, is the dentist then comes back and says, the patient is back, I need to have a remake here. And there is no, this area is so gray that there is no clarity between the dentist and the lab. As a lab, you obviously want to retain the customer, so sometimes you're doing free remakes for them. And then as a dentist, you don't want to lose that patient, so you're like trying to put the blame back on the lab. And that does happen naturally, right? So what we're trying to bring in is the scan health, where the moment it's submitted, you get to know if there are any glaring issues within the scan. And that same data is actually visible on the dental group side and as well as the dental clinic side. So yes, they do take it from the scanner, and that's something that we cannot control as Smile Genius. But the moment it's submitted, they get to see the scan health of what's really going on. So that actually puts perspective in terms of you both being on the same page at per case level. And then for the finance manager, they have a list of cases that they need to invoice you against. So and I'm just trying to kind of pick your brain on this, right? So would you still see any issues in terms of reconciliation or anything else that needs to be checked from data being sent to you either through prescription forms or through scanners? Or is this going to help you in some way move the needle in terms of progression?
Yeah, it might do. One of the things I think that you never see from the sort of laboratory side is you never see what the sort of the portal and the software looks like in the surgery. All you see is from your side, and you just receive those scans with the data and the information, the names filled out. So you don't really, you don't get to see it from the surgery side. And that is like, we get asked, oh, we've got this new scanner, how do I connect to you? And all I can say is to that, well, there should be some sort of lab locator or how to link to us, but you've just got to search for our lab name. I can't tell you how it works because I've not seen it, and there's probably about 10 to 20 different sort of scanners out there now. So, and it's something would be beneficial, just to make it easier. But usually you just see it from the laboratory side, so you never know what they're seeing in the surgery.
It's almost like we could do with like a ISO type standard of submission that every dentist and practice has to comply with, so that like we do, we have to, for the patient conformity, it's a certain criteria it has to fit, and it has to be presented in such a way that almost when a dentist submits a case, that it has to follow this criteria, that you have to make sure that, one, it's got a return date on it, it's got dentist name, it's got a patient identifying number or name on it, and it's got clear instruction of what's required.
Yeah.
It's almost like you would like that to be. Whether that's realistic, probably get 95% of that information, but you're always going to get the ones that say, please call me.
Yeah.
We had, I remember it, and I love him dearly. I won't mention him, but one of our clients, he was one of our top clients at the time, every single one of his prescriptions would be, please call me. And he was such a busy dentist, really good dentist. And the information he'd give you when you spoke to him was really useful. But trying to get hold of him was a nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. And then you've got to sort of relay that information and either write it down on that lab ticket or add it as a note to that patient's details on whatever portal you're using. If you don't do it within sort of 6 weeks, you've probably forgot that. So never mind about 7 or 8 years down the line and something crops up with Damas and it will be like, do you remember that case you did back in 2019? Yeah, we've got a query about, can you dig the paperwork out? And if all it says is please call me, you've got no hope, have you?
It's about 6 minutes for me to retain that information. Otherwise, it's gone. It's gone.
It is. That's why there's so many post-it notes around the lab, because I'd forget.
Fantastic. I think it's very insightful, Nigel and Matt, as always. I think we definitely painted a good picture about the financial side of things and the clinical impacts as well, which is great to see. So hopefully we positively move the needle in the right direction from here on. But thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.